Apologize, dude. We'll try this again. Yeah, there we go. We got it. All right.
Nice.
Let me see if I can trim. Do this. I'll do a little bit of fancy work on my end. Just get everything all positioned. All right, cool. So how's it going, Adam? We got everything going.
Excellent. It's good. Having a nice day. Day off work, chatting with you, you know. I'm
Awesome, man.
drinking coffee as well, though. Mine's just a cold brew. I think you got like fancy pour over, right?
I do. I got I've been making cloth filter coffee, dude. I'm the biggest fucking coffee nerd in the world. Like
But but do you make the cloth yourself?
I don't know. I'm
Ah,
not cool enough.
that's okay. I think it can be forgiven.
Sure. So I was gonna ask, what do you actually do for a living? I was actually just a little curious.
Oh, well, currently I have two jobs. I work at a supermarket and at a coffee shop slash kava bar. That's Kava.
Hell yeah.
And then yeah, and then I am also an artist, and so I try to make and sell art, which I've been selling more art recently than ever before, which is great. So.
That's wonderful. Do you have a place where you can actually where you sell it, like online or something?
Um, I don't have any I don't have a website, but I have sold stuff through Instagram or Facebook, original pieces. Usually online I'm selling like I have a Redbubble, so you can buy like the commodities with my art on it, like t-shirt, coffee mug, leggings, laptop cover, whatever. But it gets expensive shipping original art, big canvases and
Yeah,
stuff. So I find the majority of people that will buy it tend to be local, because
gotcha.
you're looking at like for like a 16 by 20-ish canvas, which is a fairly standard size. That's like at least $30 shipping. And that's like a short distance. The further it goes overseas is impossible. You're looking at over $100. Shipping is quite expensive and prohibitive.
Yeah, 150%. So I was gonna ask you. So yeah, definitely, you guys are extremely art orientated. I'm sure most of the chat and everyone on this channel actually know who you guys are. You guys have gotten quite big. You guys have continued to grow, and like we were talking a little bit before stream, you guys have such an unorthodox approach to content creation, right? Where you guys don't like you guys. It is so atypical. It's like you guys make memes and you do like it is like it's super cool. Like I don't even know. I can't even put a finger on exactly what you guys do. You guys do everything. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, it is a little bit of everything, which I really enjoy. And yeah, a lot of it is meme oriented. I do this with Mike Watson, who wrote "Can the Left Learn to Meme?" And he talks in that book you know, about meme theory and about why it can be important and useful in regards to both left politics and the history of abstract art. So yeah, our content tries to reflect a little bit of everything. We have more interview based stuff, we have reading groups, we have lots of visual content, and then we also do like video essays sometimes, as well as very abstract stuff like theory wave songs, or videos that are on the border of just being abstract art, but with like a mild, unconscious political content hidden within.
Yeah, gotcha. That's super cool. Like you guys definitely do a lot of cool stuff. I've seen a lot of your guys' like Rick Roderick memes. And you guys did you guys start that petition to republish his book?
Yes, yes, we did. We want to, and it's a bit of a meme petition, though we have gotten places with it. We're still talking to people, but we're now talking to Roderick's family, his son, Max Roderick,
Oh,
and trying to work something out. So it's going somewhere. And, the overall purpose, though, was to raise awareness of Roderick to more and more people. Because I really think he's, um, not just a good popularizer, but has interesting ideas of his own. And without him, you might not have seen uh, the rise of some of the characteristics that you see in BreadTube and like what you're doing. This it owes a debt to Roderick for sure.
Yeah, well, not only to like the form of what I do, but like actual content. He's popularized a lot of cool stuff, and I actually learned quite a bit. I kind of like he was like a good intro into. I actually watched his videos on YouTube. What was it, Self Under Siege? But I was curious, what actually I was looking this up the other day and I couldn't quite find it. What book did he write? I only yeah.
So yeah, it's called Habermas and the Foundations of Critical Theory. I believe that's what the name of it is, and it's yeah, his take on Habermas, who is kind of well, he was a member of the Frankfurt School, but after Adorno and Horkheimer and Marcuse, a little bit later, and he kind of denounced by many as taking a liberal turn. He has a very communicative theory, and it's all about this, like learning how to communicate with one another in a more effective way. um, but he was critiqued. Roderick was critiqued upon releasing this book because he said, "No, there's stuff in here that could really be used in a more radical way if you pair it." He tries to pair it with the Situationist, and also bringing some unorthodox reading of Derrida into it. And he got criticized because they said, "Well, your book's only 144 pages long, and you're trying to cover the work of, or you're trying to distill the work of this man whose main book is like over 1,000 pages long." He's like, "Yeah, my book's not too short. His is too long. Germans have a funny way of talking. I want people to understand my work."
And also approach your work too. I find shorter books are actually a way more efficient way in many ways to like get something out there.
Yeah, they can be. I mean, that's why, like, Zero Books, most of their books are under 300, if not under 200. Capitalist Realism being one of the biggest, and it's so short and so dense with ideas, but easy for people to read. If you give them that, they're much more likely to actually go through it than giving them something that's the size of a door stopper.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't know if you know too. I didn't actually realize this. I don't know too much about Habermas. And then something on top of that, I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is the most important thing is communication. Like that's like a lot of like the whole project. Like in my mind, that I've been thinking about a lot lately is communication because like before we were even on stream, we were talking about it. We're like, I asked you if you had a Twitter, and you're like, no, I don't. And you're like, I don't think I'd like it. I'm like, you probably wouldn't like it. And it's because of this really weird, jagged, like there is very little real communication and actual genuine communication online. And people write that off, right? People are like, oh, it's just online, dude. Who gives a fuck? Well, it's like the internet is such a powerful tool, especially in the middle of a pandemic. The idea that we can just write off that people are being snarky, that people will not communicate, people act, they sort of turn inside out, when they're online. People say, well, in person people communicate well, kind of, and that's true. But what we should do is try to like facilitate that level of like humanity and communication online and just in politics in general. That's been one of my biggest concerns lately is like how the fuck do we communicate with people better, because it's not good right now, and I'm sure you would agree. But what if you don't mind me asking, if you've read it, what are some of his ideas about like communication and stuff like that?
I'm not overly familiar with Habermas. Quite honestly,
Me either.
my Frankfurt School stuff is more Adorno based, with some Marcuse and some Fromm. So yeah, I couldn't really get into that. I've skimmed Roderick's book when we were making this petition and trying to get it re-released. So yeah, but I couldn't comment in depth about Habermas.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, same here actually. I only know like very intro level stuff.
Yeah, well, for me, because it was always like a lot of people that I respected and did find really interesting, influential, kind of wrote Habermas off. So I thought, well, what's the point of going into that and really trying to see what it's about? Um, but that's Roderick's claim, is that no, there is something there if you really take the time, and you want to radicalize it. Maybe Habermas himself wasn't radical, but there's radical work that could be done with his theories. So we have to get the book republished, you know. Or I mean, you know, people could get a uh, PDF if they really look hard enough. But I think Roderick deserves more credit
A
and more
100%.
recognition in the world.
Yeah, and not only that too, I'm also too like you know, like I don't have a problem buying a book from Rick Roderick and potentially supporting his family. Like every Mark Fisher book I've ever read, I bought. I always read on an e-reader, but I always buy the book if it's you know, if I'm making a video for it, I buy the book. Or you know, if it's an author that is alive, I always buy the book. But I almost always read PDFs on an e-reader. I just like e-readers. But um, yeah, so I've noticed, I think something that me and you share, along with probably Mike and the entire Acid Left project as a whole, is like creativity as politics and as ways to move forward. I was curious to like how is that like sort of what sparked like the Acid Left, like you guys doing what you're doing? Is that like a central ethos? Is that where you guys are as well? Like creativity is like super essential to your political project?
Yeah, absolutely it is. So how we specifically got together was just working on projects, meeting online, and you know, I had created some songs that were like cut up samples and stuff, with philosophers in them, and I was looking for someone to make a music video for me. And Mike came in and was like, "Oh, I think I could do something with this," and we put out a video together. I really liked it, and we just started working together more and more, and decided, hey, what we're doing here, we should like actually make it a thing instead of just two people collaborating all the time, um, and trying to explore that. So for me, creativity is integral to politics. It's integral to human life. Like to me, it goes beyond that. You know, there's certain strains of Marxist thought that say, well, uh, art can be useful because it's not useful. But I see that. I think that's an interesting point, like how it isn't directly tied, you know, to the market or commodities or whatever, or doesn't have to be. Um, but to me, no, it is something actually deeper, that creativity is good for humans and it's an essential part of what it means to be human. So teaching people how to access their creative side is good for them in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's also, it's really weird, like you said, there's like a sort of Marxist antithesis to that idea. Yet at the same time, when you read Marx, you know, Marx will speak about the species essence, and he talks about how the species essence is sort of this creativity that's been killed by an alienated industrial workforce. Especially now, that's fresh in my mind. I actually just read part one of German Ideology, and we're actually making a video on it, but I see a lot of like I see so much really like I see so much like sort of dialectical overlap with Marx, and there is this sort of like I think the Marxism that has sort of reigned supreme in the existing world after Marx was a Marxism of like vulgar materialism. I'll be honest, especially when I read Marx, you know, when I go back, and I see where they're coming from, right? Because Marx certainly, you know, he was there too. Like again, there's like Marx is a dialectical thinker. He contradicts himself like quite a bit, and but that's not bad, right? That's totally not bad, but he does. And he talks about the lack of creativity, right, with you know, industrial capitalism, where it kills our creativity, the ownership of our work, the, you know, the division of labor separates all workers, and the problem with that is we don't encompass all of our work, right? We don't control a lot of the facets that go into it. We only control like one or two facets, and yet the prescriptive politics that posits from that thinking in a system, in a Marxist like system, is one of like actually like raw production where they don't care about art. Yet again, they also contradict themselves because there's pictures of fucking Lenin, and you know, you see Marxist symbolism's huge, right? And so there is an idealism to it, but that doesn't get talked about a lot, right? Um, it's incredibly ideological, and not in all bad ways, but yeah, I'm with you there. I think creativity is absolutely essential, and it's something that we don't even think about, right? Like, um, Yeah, that's a big core of my political and just like like almost like my ontology, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I want to say about Marx as well. There's a great book I read. It's a little well, it's a little dry and a little boring, but I like the content very much. Marx's Lost Aesthetics by Margaret A. Rose, I believe, and she kind of traces that. Yeah, the writing that Marx did actually do on literature and on some paintings when he was in college.
Yeah.
Um, and shows that what he valued, what he's talking about here is actually sensualism. When he praises paintings, the ones that he talks about are the ones that try to go beyond mere representation. And then she uses that to draw a comparison to the Soviet Union and how in early revolutionary times up until the first few years of the Soviet Union, you have the constructivists and this Russian avant garde movement, which is really trying to make the case that art is productive, that beyond, just decoration or looking nice, there's something to it that's positive for people and for society. I think she makes a really great case for that. And yeah, like socialist realism, the Stalinist doctrine of socialist realism was a terrible decision. I mean, like a lot of stuff Stalin did, sure,
Right. Yeah.
but it really is like we, you still see that shadow hanging over left circles where they, try to make that look like it's something like you hear the argument that modern art is ugly and stupid and is trying to make people dumb, and what we need is pictures of the revolution and inexactitude with strong men and women doing this. No, that's bullshit. Like that's not going to inspire anyone, and it's not going to break any thought patterns in anyone. You need something that pushes the envelopes and actually envisions itself as a productive element of society.
Yeah, it's like art in itself intrinsically is something that pushes parameters. You can't set right, the doctrine of socialist realism. You can't set those parameters. It's a little bit ironic. I'm not gonna lie. I think as far as paintings go, socialist realism is among my favorite. I don't know why, but no, you're 100% correct. Like the actual prescriptive doctrine is it's a terrible idea, right? And I think oddly enough, it reinforces capitalism harder than anything, right? So, like you saw in the Eastern Bloc through history, was people started wearing like in the 70s and the 80s, they started wearing like Western clothes, and they started getting into Western, essentially art, music, culture at large. And what does that do other than just absolutely hurt your political project at large, right? Again, there's totally a Marxist argument that to be made that like art is absolutely necessary. Marx himself was going to be a poet before he really got into journalism. Yet at the same time, what we see in the sort of prescriptive systems at large is we did see a sort of narrowing down of art, right? It was sort of an overly stringent idea of what that was. And what does that do other than hurt a future project of socialism,
Yeah. And so you're reading the German ideology right now. You said also to take note is the influence of Saint Simone to Marx and Engels. And Saint Simone absolutely valued art as a productive for measure in society. That's kind of like a big part of his whole project. So you would have to think that people inspired by him, really have at least that influence to them. And yeah, like you're saying, there's lots of arguments for that. Funny thing about Marx's poetry, I don't know if I'm really big into conspiracy theories.
know?
As in reading them, I don't know. I have since I was a little kid, and the older I get, I still do it, and I find a particular fun time in reading like right wing conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And a lot of them will point to Marx's early poetry to prove that he was, like a Satanist or whatever, trying to bring down Christianity. And I just think that's really, really funny because the majority of people who call themselves Marxists don't even know that he wrote poetry.
100%. Yeah. Uh, it speaks to the power of Marxism, but yeah, Marxism absolutely stands as sort of like an aesthetic phenomenon, right? It's an identity, more than an actual political project for people. It's a coping mechanism, and that's not, that's in my opinion, that's quite bad in most ways. But there's a reason for that, and it's because Marx is a pretty powerful thinker, and he did a lot as far as materialism and understanding the actual, making a actual true philosophy and theory around the basis of production and material interaction around us. There's a lot you can do with that politically. I think I think that's where, we talk about this in stream all the time, because this is, and I'm sure there's people who are probably annoyed by that, but that is something I care about that so much, is that, look, I don't think we're done with Marx, right? So maybe I'm a little bit like Derrida here, right? And there's a hauntology, but like truly we're not done with Marx, man. We're, I think a lot of theorists in the 20th century, especially the late to mid, they're like, look, Marxism's done, right? Especially, after, Fukuyama, like, it's done, but that's not going to happen. It's not. Like, we see today that there is still such a prescient, like again, like a hauntology of Marx, and it's like, and there's a reason for that. I don't think we're done. I just think it's going to be something different than what we've seen, and that something different is only going to be posited from a creative political force moving forward. And it can't be something too rigid. And that's a project that I care about a whole lot. And it's a project that doesn't get taken seriously enough. I think it has a ton of potential, but again, I think the quote unquote jouissance of group politics and group identity, and people want, there is a jouissance of structure. There's a pleasure in structure and being, the rigid parameters. People in many ways need that, right? And it's like, it works almost as like a Bible, but I think we have to break through those barriers. And I think that and it will allow us to envision a future political project that is much more fruitful than what we've seen in the past. There's so much potential there, but I see it's not going too well at the moment.
Yes. And so when you say it's going to be different, you mean different than the way Marxists in the past have envisioned it?
Well, absolutely, and 100%. And it's like, at the same time, I don't quite care what Marx had to say about this. Yet at the same time, Marx, I think that's the sort of thinker Marx is, and later thinkers is, you have to think dialectically, right? And I think it speaks to the state of Marxism right now being a incredibly undialectical entity, right? Most people identify as a Marxist-Leninist. Most like really like I would say like decently well-read Marxist. They still exist as Marxist-Leninist, right? And in my mind, about 100 years later, that's kind of crazy, right? Like the fact that like we're still granted, there's been a rupture to Maoism, but even to Maoism, in my mind, one of the critiques that I find with the Marxism, Leninism, Maoism camp is that it hardly feels like a rupture. It doesn't really change. It doesn't feel. It's just essentially Marxism, Leninism with the mass line. I don't know if you're read on that as well. I'm glad a lot of Maoists absolutely recognize the need for the dialectical nature of Marxism, but it hardly feels like the dialectics that we sort of need, right? And I think this dialectical nature, I think we need to. I think when it comes to organizing politics and organizing political power, I think Marxism is quite good. Yet at the same time, that's not all Marxism is. Some people like to say that Marxism is just the understanding of revolution and the necessity of revolution. I think that's really unfair to Marx and Engels, because there is an analytic there. There's a descriptive nature of what they're talking about, right? With historical materialism and stuff like that. So I think the rupture, the dialect that we need, is an understanding of things like sign value, right? We need to incorporate things like Baudrillard. We need to incorporate people like Fisher. We need to understand like the true encompassing nature of capitalism, how it spans almost beyond material, right? Marx and Engels talk about how it expands beyond material, but that doesn't get taken seriously. And and it becomes something baldly idealist, and I don't quite like that. But that's my take on Marxism.
Yeah. So when it comes to like Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, and stuff, I think it also depends where you are to a degree. Like, I don't know. This might be problematic to say, but I could see the reasoning and appeal of Maoism if you are living in the global South.
Yeah,
But
100%.
but yeah, in America or the UK or Canada or something like that, it seems more like play acting because
Yeah.
you don't have the ability to actually operate in that capacity. You're not operating like the militants in India. And if you were, it would be a completely different thing. I mean, you'd probably be raided by the government and shut down, and labeled a domestic terrorist almost
And
instantly.
I want to
But
clarify for chat. When I talk about these critiques, I'm kind of unique in the sense that like I don't think I would find myself as a self-identified Maoist, quote unquote. But if Maoist organizations were popping up in the United States, I quite literally would organize with them. Because I think there's I want to
yeah,
I want to be clear. I don't want anyone in chat feeling like offended or something like that, or feeling like I'm just shitting on Marxism. A lot of people think I do that. I don't. Marxism's very good. The scientific Marxism is very good at understanding the power of organization, and they're very good at that. But I'm just also interested in more than just that, right? I love philosophy, so I look towards descriptive analytics further than that. But as far as concrete organization, Marxism has a shit ton of answers. They're good at they're good at analyzing the failures of the past. Not all. Again, Maoism is quite good at that, I think. But sorry, I just wanted to clarify. You can continue.
no, yeah. I understand why you would want to clarify that. And also, like, the world is changing. I mean, this sounds so sophomoric to say. The world is changing constantly. You have to continually reevaluate what's going on, and that's the material conditions of today. What capitalism actually looks like and how it's morphing and changing is, of course, going to change how one organizes and what the future could look like. If socialism was achieved in the 1900s, it would look different than if socialism is achieved, next year. The world is already so different. It's just going to have to change because it's an evolution out of capitalism.
Right.
So as capitalism morphs and changes, the socialism that evolved out of it will necessarily be different. And a lot of, writers after Marx have excellent analysis of capitalism, and it's great to understand that, but you cannot apply capital directly to the world today and be like, that's it, got all the answers.
Yeah,
There's so
100%.
much going on.
Absolutely. Zizek's really good at pointing that out, where there's little hints of what Marx was talking about, where he talked about parasitic capitalism being investment. And Marx was even baffled. He even had like sort of a baffling tonality to this. Like, holy shit! Like, look at, like, he talked about the abstract nature. Holy shit, man! Zizek points out how, like, dude, Marx today would be like, what the fuck? Like, they would all be like, what is going on, right? In the sense that Zizek's really good at pointing out that more than just an abstraction of capital, there's like a controlled abstraction of structures around it. And what I mean by that, and what Zizek means by that, is that, like, look, capitalism today is turning into a rent economy of platforms, right? When we think of rent, we think real estate, we think people, paying rent, monthly rent to live, and that certainly still exists, and that's a fucking terrible problem. But what happens today is, we see things like Netflix, right? Where they're like, look, they're going to suck up all content that they can, and then you have to pay rent to them. And then on the other end, there's, like, for education, rather, capital's now structuring social orders in an abstract sense, where the most sort of parasitic capitalism is now winning. And what they mean by that is abstract capital wins by way of making something like post-high school education 100% necessary, and as like a new order where like, listen, everyone just goes into debt, right? It's just socially accepted that you will be enslaved by this parasitic capitalism, and that is capital abstracted beyond Marx, right?
Yeah, yeah. Just try to not ever go into debt and see how easy it is to exist. It's harder
It
than someone who's deeply in debt, and yeah, the system necessitates that.
100%. It is we're getting, and I'm here with that capitalism will necessitate failure and failure and failure, albeit it's much stronger than I think any Marxist could have anticipated. It truly is. And this is part of the reason why I even think organizational power, again, Marxism's extremely good at understanding the sort of analytic of organization, understanding where things might go wrong, where things are good. But I even in some ways still think they sort of underestimate the power of actual just true existing material organization around capital, like the military industrial complex. And
Yeah.
we, if Marxism is making revolution, dude, I mean, we're really far and away from being able to actually do revolution. And there's questions that we can talk about as well later on about the I don't think revolution on its own is good enough, nor do a lot of Marxists, but like there is sort of a fetish around that, and it can be washed down pretty easy. But truly, we are just living in times where it's like the existing nature of capital is so much stronger and reinforced, right? Even though it fails every 10 years, it doesn't matter anymore. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, I mean, in many ways, when capitalism fails, that's how it evolves. That's how it
mhm.
morphs. You know, it's able to change the very conditions in which led to that failure, and it adapts to them. But also, but not in a positive sense, like like a socialist would want an adaptation to take place, but it morphs. So like rent, the move towards rent is a great example of that, because the rate of profit is incredibly or increasingly falling. There's this tendency for that. And how do you continue to extract wealth and extract money? Well, you just charge people rent for something that they've already technically bought. And like Netflix is a good example, but most computer programs now, like, so Adobe Photoshop and the Adobe Suites and stuff like that, you
Humanity is
used to
rising. We'll
buy
become red
this. You would get
giants.
a disc and you would put it in and you would download it and you had it. Now you rent it. You pay a monthly subscription fee. Everything is becoming this subscription fee. And you can't even continue to use it if your subscription runs out. It's not like you don't continually get updates. They make it so that you need to get the updates through the subscription in order for it to actually function. So you can't even just buy anything now. Which is, if that continues, if that trend continues, it's going to be terrible. And we see that with, like, things like the gig economy too. Um, and how it went from being something that's like, oh, well, it's this freedom that you could have until you just go and do this little thing whenever you feel like it, to it actually being jobs that are soul sucking, but without any type of, the very small benefits that traditional employment would give you, like stability or, maybe a small type of health insurance or something like that. So you're offered freedom from non-committal, but you end up being enslaved just a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. One second, I do want to say thank you to Mateo for the $5. Thank you so much, my friend. Genuinely appreciate that. But that's right, man. It's I think through this is why I think again dialectics are important as far as analysis goes, right? Is that if we don't have a dialectical way of understanding even capital, right, we can't truly understand the state of it at its current point, and that requires an essence of creativity, right? This requires understanding new approaches to things, and like we've seen with like Zizek, the rent economy is it, man. This is and it's also the rent economy, like you said, is like it's a huge sign that stuff is failing, right? The rate of profit's falling. There's I've talked about this on stream a little bit. There's a book that I've been told to read by his name's Prolocult. He makes I think Prolocult Films is their YouTube channel. He's a very, I think he's a very dedicated, he's a very much a Marxist thinker, far probably more than me. But he says he was going into detail about this, where like even social democracy, this is quite scary, because social democracy is a political project we are like we want in a lot of ways in the United States. We don't even have that, right? But social democracy is starting to fail, is what a lot of Marxists have been seeing through the Marxist lens of economics. Is that we're not even going to be able to sustain like a universal healthcare system with the way capital's working right now. Where we're already seeing rationing of healthcare systems in the UK, right? Where immigrants now have to pay for their healthcare. I think that's a new thing. You know, we're seeing things with like people with disabilities. I don't know if you saw this, but if they're sick with COVID and they die, they have orders not to resuscitate individuals with disabilities. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we're seeing a lot. Apparently, we're seeing a lot of the downfall of like almost every order of capitalism, right? So there was an argument to be made that like, look, social democracy is the way capitalism functions the best, but even that we're getting to the point where that's not even working. So I don't know what the future. I'm not a Marxist. I'm not a Marxist like economist. Like I'm not very well educated on the economic side of Marxism, but that sounds pretty fucking scary to me.
Yeah, well, so first I just want to say, you know, the people that were justifying the fact that uh people with disabilities are, you know, now on this no resuscitation order because of COVID and stuff. Those are the same people that complained that, you know, universalized healthcare would give us death panels, but now the market's giving us death panels. So,
Yeah.
um, which, you know, we should have known. We probably did that it always would have, and already did anyways, because if you couldn't pay for it, you were fucked. And I can cuss and stuff on here, right?
Oh, absolutely. Say whatever you
Okay,
want.
okay. I'm being very loose with my language. I just wanted to make sure. I sometimes appear on like Christian podcasts and stuff too, and that's you got to really watch it what you
Oh,
say.
okay. Do you go on Christian podcasts?
Yeah. I've been on one a couple times. The Sectarian Review. He is a Marxist though. But
Oh,
a very Christian based Marxist.
so
Um,
liberation theology sort of stuff?
uh, you know, it's interesting. Not quite, although he
Okay.
does cover that sometimes. He grew up in like the Nazarene church, so like kind of this like fundamentalist type thing,
Oh,
and just grew to understand. No, I don't think that's quite right. But he's still very much a Christian. It's a great podcast. I really recommend it. There's actually a few zero books type people that go on there sometimes.
oh, all right.
But I'm getting sidetracked. There was something I wanted to say. Healthcare. Oh, I don't know. I forgot
The creation of death panels through market healthcare and stuff like that.
it. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was something adjacent to that. But let's just go on. If it was important, I'll remember it.
Gotcha. Um, so like, you know, we can maybe move on to individual theorists. I take it Mark Fisher is probably your most influential theorist.
Wait. That's what it was. It was Fisher, and it was rationing. So you
Hmm.
know that's Fisher's point at the end of capitalist realism is, hey, like smell the burning tires. The rationing is coming.
Yeah.
This is not continuing. Any reasonable person can look at the numbers and look at the future, and we are facing a big problem. So rationing one way or another is coming, and it will either be done by the market or it will be done by some kind of socialist state. You know, so pick your poison, and you probably want the central bureaucracy over, you know, the 20% of rich people telling you to fuck off.
100%. I think this is something people fail to understand about like sort of a centralized state planned economy, right? Where again, I truly I really do think this. I think that there's been a lot of mistakes how China and Russia operated, but also it's not to not to say that like again they were under huge economic pressure. I mean, the United States truly like again, I like Ben Burgess because Ben Burgess brings logic into this, and I think he brings up he constantly talks about where we talk about future politics is he brings up the Hume's what is it, Hume's law, where like we always say because something, I think it's like what is and what ought to be, and then how something operated in the past versus what it will be in the past. That's fallacious reasoning, right? We don't know how this would essentially work out. We don't know if the United States and some other, the UK and Western powers didn't exist as capitalist countries. We have no idea what the world would look like. And in a way that's scary, right? That, like in some way, even if it's better, that's still like we are, it just shows the human psychology. It's still kind of a scary thing. But we don't know how that would look. And so I even think that, like, again, like Mark Fisher is saying, like, even this, state centralized planned economy is like way more favorable than what we will probably be experiencing pretty soon. And that's something that's a little bit scary as well to me. I think about that as well, where we will start to see a rationing. I don't see, the future is not good, and that sucks. And we can talk about what future systems will work. I usually talk about, like, whenever I have people on streams, what do you think will be the future system of, because again, I'm completely convinced it's going to be a system of socialism, but there's so many different socialisms that it's hard to pin down. What do you think that we might see in the future, and how might that unfold?
What we might see, well, so I want to answer that with maybe what I would like to see, because
Sure.
I don't know.
That's a hard question.
Like I want to give somewhat of a good answer, which hopefully there's something better out there. But yeah, I do see some kind of heavily technology assisted socialism coming in, where there are probably central mandates from some kind, but you have more of a like distributive network where it's not completely centralized like you saw in the Soviet Union or you see in China today. But there's gonna have to be planning, and there's gonna have to be that kind of stuff. You could probably nationalize quite a bit of things. I don't care. If this is if the world's ending, fuck it, nationalize Walmart, nationalize Amazon,
100%.
Take it all over. Go for it. If that's the last ditch, it makes complete sense to me.
Even under, I want to add, even too, I think even under capitalism itself, right? It's not inherently, quote unquote, just socialist to nationalize. Even in a capitalist system, I would be in favor of nationalizing things such as Walmart and Amazon.
Yes, yeah, I would too. And I'm kind of convinced by Frederick Jameson's Crazy American Utopia book. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not, actually.
It is it's a wild proposal, and his proposal is to draft everyone 16 to 60 into the military. And therefore they're automatically given housing, they're giving health care, they're giving a stipend, perhaps they're given what else do you get? Free education, all of that, because you're part of the military. And then of course any military that is that large can't only operate for war functions, so you start redeploying what it means to be a military. And it's really just a very large version of like the civic the CCC from like the New Deal or whatever. But
I see.
Through this, you're giving everyone some kind of living wage, and you're decommodifying most things like housing, utilities, education, healthcare. All of that goes out. You're required to work maybe 20 hours a month from the government through your military service, and the rest of your life is yours, and that's it.
That sounds very sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Were you going to say more? It sometimes cuts off.
Go ahead.
It sometimes cuts off. So sometimes your voice will, like, sometimes I think you're done, and then all of a sudden it'll cut back in. I apologize. That sounds super scary at first, right? But it's sort of like that. I like that. I never even. I think I've heard about that a long time ago, but I completely forgot about that idea. Sounds like almost like an ideological self sabotage within the military. That's a very interesting idea. I haven't actually taken that very seriously. I kind of. I need to think on that. I like that a little bit because
It's
yeah,
hard to take seriously because it's so radically different from anything. But I think Jameson makes some really interesting points in there, and he's also, you know, he says it a bit with, tongue in cheek during it. He realizes that what he's saying is kind of crazy, but he
of
also
course.
realizes that, well, the world is quite crazy anyways, and we are facing gigantic catastrophes in the future. So we have to change something. And if we don't, that's what's going to happen is that the powerful, those who have power now, are going to exercise it brutally against anyone who they want to. There is no everything's going to be okay. We have to accept that there is catastrophe in the future.
100%. And it's funny, capitalism with a smiley face, as we see today, is actually more dangerous. And it's not necessarily because it has a smiley face, right? Capitalism isn't more dangerous because there's a facade. Capitalism is more dangerous because capitalists operate more dangerously today, right? So we see the actual like concrete military industrial complex at the largest it's ever been. Anti-unionism is at the absolute height, I would imagine, today than it has kind of ever been, right? Especially in the United States, where unions just don't really fucking exist. We have no fundamental worker organization whatsoever. Nonetheless, actual revolutionary organization, right? So this is another problem we have to contend with immediate Marxism or immediate revolution. We have no fucking organization. It doesn't exist. It's a dream right now. It's a dream that we should absolutely build on, but like there is no concrete sort of structural resistance in the shadows at all. Like it just does. It's not there. And for that to happen, it's probably going to take like a massive, pretty huge downfall in capitalism. And yeah, I don't see that until automation. I don't know when that'll happen. Um, I'm quite curious to see what the 2030s and 2040s hold for us. But I think automation. I think the book that I was recommended by Perlicult called "Socialism or Extinction" by Ted Reese. I think that's his big thing. Is like, look, if we can point out one phenomenon in capitalism that will usher in this new world, it's going to be automation, man. I think he says that like because of the effects with capital that automation makes, it's not going to win. It can't win. It's impossible. You will see it either wins and we lose half of our population on Earth, or capitalists fall.
So automation wins and we lose half the
So
population?
so like no. Essentially, it's just like, look, we're going to be presented with a situation with automation where it's like, look, either automation wins on the side of capitalists, and half the world just starves, right? Like people are just going to fucking die because the resources will be sucked up into the unbelievable territory, or what happens is people don't accept that, and we see extreme like sort of organization and revolt like we've never seen before.
Oh, well, yeah, that I agree with quite a bit. Because I think so. Are you familiar with the what's it called, the Petro distribution or something like that?
I'm
The
not.
80%, 20%.
Yeah.
It's this math thing. Jordan Peterson brings it up quite a bit when he's like arguing against Marxism, and it's like the way distribution tends to go, where it's something like 20% of the people produce 80% of the value.
Oh.
Um, and he uses that as an example of saying like, well, and really that's just how it is, and there's all these people that are kind of useless. But I think the end goal of that logic, that way of thinking, is that is what the capitalists, that is their end goal, is to produce some kind of wonderful tech place with automation or whatever. But once they have it, then you have surplus population like never before. And yeah, they probably do. They won't care. You could starve,
Yeah.
or you could be given the tiniest of scraps to keep going, you know. And now we're sounding like a sci-fi dystopia, but
But
we're
that's
not that far off.
no. I mean, we're oh, dude. If anything, 2020 has shown us like this year. We're not done. And then, and what's even further more important in the immediate future. Not only are we not done with the sci-fi dystopia, we're not done with a sort of neo-fascist immediate political threat. And again, I say that because of the monumental failings we're seeing with Biden. Biden's actually worse than I thought he would be. There was a couple things that immediately I thought Biden would do. And then it's not going to happen. There was just a hand. I knew Biden was going to suck. I think everyone knew that, but he's sucking quite a bit worse than actually what I anticipated, and it's actually beyond laughable. It's insane. I figured he would at least cancel $50K in student loan debt because it's such an easy win for Democrats. It is that is the easiest political thing that I could have like ever, and he has the power to do it. He knows he has the power to do it. I figured he would at least do that. That was the one thing I was like, all right, look, if he's going to do anything, I think it's going to be that, because the powers are so clear in his hand. It's such an easy win. I mean, dude, if he did that, Democrats would win for quite a while. But of course, we see with the political economy, it's not quite the goal. But further than that, I figured, all right, and then we'd see a reversal of the immigration policies. We probably wouldn't see detention centers like we're seeing. Neither of those are going to happen. And that's actually crazy. That's crazy as fuck. Like that, truly, we are not done with the immediate threat of neo-fascism and absolute sort of, I want to say like ethno-statism. Really, truly, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Republican Party was crazy before Trump, and
Yeah.
they're even worse now. The ethno-nationalism is barely concealed by anything. It is quite frightening, and I'm with you about Biden. I thought he was, yeah, obviously gonna suck, but do a little bit more. The
Yeah.
last thing I saw news about Biden was he was actually on track to deport more people than Trump did in his first year, which like that is not a, obviously I'm not concerned about the look, but that is not
Sure.
a good look for Biden. You know, and that's not good for those people by any means. I don't know if that's true. It's a headline I saw. I didn't actually read anything deeper about it because I feel very black pilled with Biden. So
Yeah. I see in chat. I figured I would see that. I'm more surprised that you thought he would do anything than him not doing anything. Well, like, look, truly, when I say the easiest thing he could have ever have done, the easiest thing Democrats could have ever have done is just cancel $50K in student loan debt. That would make the biggest immediate difference. And here's the thing, again, bring in the political economy. That's not even that bad with his donors, right? He's not even really contradicting hardcore the will of his donors with that, right? So these companies, these financial companies, they're going to get the money, right? They're going to get the cash, right? It's not, he's just wiping it completely. They get paid. And so that's why immediately I'm like, dude, like I that is at least the one thing. It doesn't matter how terrible you are like Biden. That's at least the one thing I figured would happen. I don't even know if we're going to get a public option. That was one of his promises, a public option. I'm actually convinced at this point we probably won't even get a public option. And if that doesn't happen,
it wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't, and that's mind blowing too, because a public option is like, I think when we talk about the immediate impact of a public option, a lot of people think from the get go public option will just fall apart. It's going to be a program that like is going to be heavily rationed, and it's not even going to be effective whatsoever. So we probably won't even get that either, which is just insane. And I think again, truly. Oh God, I mean, organizational power is what we need right now, but it's and not only organizational power. I think I got to be a little bit careful here, but I think we need immediate and I don't mean this in like a violent way or whatsoever, but we need an immediate militant organizational power. Again, that does not have to that does not mean that we should be violent or people should be violent, but we should absolutely be threatening to structures at play. And that can be held in a lot of ways, like a general strike, right? Refusal to partake in the economy at large with certain organizational means, but we're so far off from that, and we are at such a detrimental point in our country's history. We've never seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm most surprised that we didn't get $2,000 checks within the first month.
Me too. It's we don't I typically on stream don't talk a lot about the immediate politics going on right now, but yeah, like it's good we're having this discussion because yeah, I mean, dude, um, and people are even saying like, are we even going to get 1,400? Is that a thing? Like, dude, it's truly it's mind blowing, right? I haven't even completely thought through this. It's when you're speaking it into existence, you truly understand the insanity. Yeah, holy fuck, man. I would be
Yeah.
I'd so
But
I Mhm.
Google tells me every couple days, they update me and they're like, you could be getting a third stimulus check. And I'm increasingly getting angry over it because I'm like, what the fuck, Google? Why do you keep telling me this? Where is it?
Yeah, 100%. I would still I would be a little shocked if we didn't get $1,400 because it's been something that's been hammered away. But I mean, dude, truly, like it might happen. It really might happen. Yeah, what a fucking what a dystopia. It's funny. I've thought about it lately, and it's not like this was a good time. I thought about like how, especially after 2020, even 2019, I never had this immediate feeling of nostalgia. But after 2020, I was thinking back to like 2013, 2012. What a different fucking world that was, right? And that was in the middle of like Obama neoliberalism, right? That sucked. But I almost yearned for a world that was like even that, you know what I mean? And that's terrible. That's a terrible world, right? When you look at it. But I even think back, I'm like, God damn, the world around us was in actually kind of relatively better shape than it is, not even close to like now. It's my life individually is in a way better state than it was then, right? I'm quite fortunate to be in a good position right now, but oh my God, the world isn't.
No, that's very true. Yeah, that is very true. I haven't thought about that in
isn't
that way.
isn't that
I
interesting?
miss Yeah, I miss right before 2012 when you had a bunch of people telling us the world was going to end and I
Mm-hmm.
could, have productive conversations with right-leaning libertarians and we could, talk shit about Obama.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, that went away.
I know it's
What a world.
I know it's totally different. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think someone said in chat, no militant left in Portland, right? Dude, like, okay, people operate somewhat militantly in Portland, but there's not a militant organization in Portland, right? There's a big discrepancy and difference there. And further, if there is going to be a militant structure of and what I mean by militant too, I need to clarify, it's not like, put up arms per se, but it's like it's the organizational power to strike, to like absolutely like, and in many ways like this might be dangerous for me to say on YouTube, but fuck it, like, but actually like fundamentally like, um go into city centers and actually like fuck shit up, like vandalize a little bit. That does not include hurting people, but like this is something that I think even people on the left, like being totally honest, some people won't say this for obvious reasons, but like vandalism works in many ways, right? Don't go vandalize small businesses per se, but like go burn Target or whatever. I don't care. Like it gets the fundamental attention going, but there needs to be organizational power there, right? There's no organization right now, really. There's no capacity to actually organize and mobilize on a large scale. That organization does not exist, and that's where the problem is, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you in a sense. I would also stress that any type of militancy that is going out and trying to cause damage like that, vandalize or whatever, it has to be able to provide like at least a similar level of
Oh,
effort towards putting care
oh yeah, yeah.
to the people. Like
Exactly, and that's where the organizational structure comes in, right?
right,
It's not
right.
good enough to just go in and fuck shit up, but nonetheless, that actual tactic on its own still is more effective than what people realize, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's I mean it's a lot older than people realize too. I recently read a book about socialism in America in the early 1900s, and one of the big things that they talked about was the split in the Socialist Party because of arguments over workplace sabotage. So even in like 1912, this was going on because there were people that were like, well, look, the boss is stealing from you. Maybe you should accidentally drop a wrench in those gears and shut down the factory for a few days.
Yep.
And then you had people arguing with them that, like, no, this is going to hurt our cause overall. And that was one, like, not directly, but that split there did kind of go out and cause the Socialist Party in America to split, and then that split, and then that split, and now some of those organizations are still around, and they have 500 members, and they operate like some Protestant cult. So
Right. And you know what's I think this, this gives us a deeper theoretical lens as how organization goes, right? So I think that the idea that this hurts our cause, this sort of antagonism, I think that's a very liberal idea as far as prescriptive politics goes. Now, there's nothing more I hate than people online calling people libs or using liberal in a very non-accurate way. I hate that. I hate it so much because I think liberalism does a decent idea. I think it does decent things as far as a mode of analysis, right? As looking at things in some ways. I don't think liberalism is totally dead in that regard. Understanding some sort of ethical judgment, some morality, some understanding certain forms of individual liberty. That's great. Like I'm not going to shit on that, but as far as prescriptive politics, I think liberalism absolutely has failed 150%. But I see that there's a clear divide, right? In our psyche, we are absolutely Western liberals, right? Even if we don't realize it, there's a psychological factor to the idea of property, right? Where you're like, oh God, don't drop that wrench in there. That's going to hurt, our cause, the boss, and but at the same time, right, it's like we don't think in actual immediate material functions. We don't think in immediate material results where we rationalize things through an idealistic lens when something like dropping a wrench and absolutely quite literally destroying the immediate functions of capitalist at the beginning, like that on its own, I think the immediate material goals is the most important. Doesn't mean you can justify really horrid acts, but I think that's something that, as far as the American and Western psyche, that's something that we have to overcome. But then we also have to be careful with how we do that, of course, right? There's a line there that must not be, drawn. But right now, it's like we have this sort of sublime idea, even if it's subconsciously, of property, right?
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I got distracted. So I
No
saw in the
problem.
chat someone say the young man is the radical traditionalist Julius Evola enthusiast, and I don't know who they're talking about.
Not
But
sure.
fuck Evola. I don't. I hope that's wasn't pointed at me. I've had a couple people compare me to Evola before because he made art. And
What?
obviously I make art.
What?
Well, and a somewhat abstract, but Evola was a weird fascist, and
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah, no. Fuck
Um,
that.
yeah, just out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ebola, and I was like, "Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Please, not again."
no, but I quite like, I sort of was talking about psychoanalysis. I really like social psychoanalysis. I think social psychoanalysis can give us ideas, right? So like Marcuse, his project, and again, people who say Marcuse sucks because his like ideas of how to escape the problems, right? Art is liberation. I get that. Totally cool. Probably not necessarily too realistic. I'm with you. But the immediate analysis of Marcuse, the project of saying that like, look, psychoanalysis is really good, not on an individual level, but a sociological level. Holy fuck, that's so true, right? It doesn't matter. Fuck the content of psychoanalysis, the form, the way in which things operate in the social sphere. Psychoanalysis is pretty fucking good at understanding that. And the one thing I see is the sublime form, the sublime idea of property. Even Marxists can't escape it, right? We're Lockeans. Holy fuck,
No, very true. I like Marcuse, and I think psychoanalysis is very useful. I know Elliot Rosenstock was in the chat earlier. I don't know if he still is, and this is something I've discussed with him before. It comes from that Jameson book again, and it's putting individual neuroses to positive purposes, trying to understand that people's individual, like what might be deemed problems are problems because of the system that they're operating within. When in reality, now, of course, there are mental problems that exist that are, you can't get beyond. But in general, you know, your psychic state can be used for different things, and there can be a place, or at least I want to imagine a society which there can be a place where those types of things can be put into use, and some kind of psychoanalysis is very helpful for that process and necessary to understand.
Yeah, 100%. I also find, again, if you take dialectics seriously, there's an almost dialectic tonality to psychoanalysis, right? It's understanding sort of opposite subliminal underpinnings of things, right? And not a lot of people think about it in that way. I've oddly enough, I've never heard any real theorists talk about it like that, other than I think Lacan may have. But I saw that in chat one day. I was like, I like that idea. I like that idea quite a lot, where psychoanalysis almost operates as sort of like you can use a dialectical analysis of looking at it, right? Where if psychoanalysis is something that we use to understand the subconscious underpinnings of our being, well, holy shit, isn't that sort of a little bit of there's a dialectical opposite tonality and way to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, people who speak about individualism versus collectivism, when, it doesn't make any sense to be an individual if there is no collective. And what is a
Exactly.
collective without, except, a bunch of individuals, but you can't reduce either to their own self. There has to be a dialectical relationship there to
Right.
understand it.
That's something, one thing Marxists and conservatives alike get so fucking wrong that I see that I hate, right? Where people say, a lot of Marxists will say, I'll pick on the Marxists first, sorry guys, that a lot of Marxists will say, like, look, like, collectivism is the only thing that exists. Like, but no, our current ideas of collectivism isn't even what Marx thought. Marx actually agreed with Hegel in the dialectic of recognition, but he saw the recognition of individuals through material processes, right? Through labor, through organizational power. The individual still exists in a market or in a Marxist system, and it should. From a Marxist standpoint, the individual absolutely is necessary for a collective as a whole, and vice versa. Right? And conservatives obviously think that Marxism is just some fucking huge, like the individual doesn't exist. That's horseshit. Marx and Engels talk about the individual and how consciousness is developed through group organization and structures of labor.
Yeah, and the whole project is to deliver individual liberty and freedom to individuals, within a larger context. Changing the collective in order to allow an individual to have what the liberal revolutionaries promised.
100%. This is again truly I see, I said you wouldn't like Twitter is because there is a group of people on Twitter I see all the time. They say don't read theory. That's a big thing that they'll say. No, stop telling people to read theory, and then they will try to gatekeep what Marx said. I'm like, okay, listen, you don't need to read theory to be a proponent of socialism, right? Socialism's broader than just Marxism, I think. As far as a system past capitalism, absolutely, you don't necessarily have to be a Marxist, but in order to understand what Marx said, in order to understand what's being said, you got to read Marx. You got to read him, man. It sucks. It's a little bit of work. But there is such a bastardization. There is such a complete fundamental misunderstanding that, like, oh my God, I even was victim of this. I thought I used online definitions and online conceptualizations of Marx without even fucking reading him. I did it. And so it's something that we have to fucking work past, right? And we have to, again, I think we have to do, I think bringing the intellectual approach, we can maybe move on to this as well, where I've talked a lot about this on the channel as well. I think intellectualism, an intellectual endeavor needs to be something that everyone undergoes. That is the ultimate goal. And Mao said this. Mao said this as well. He said one of the problems being that not everyone has the capacity to be the immediate material capacity, right? Because of labor, the work process, people don't have a home to live in. They don't have the immediate ability to become sort of the intellectual, and he wanted to change that. So it's base when Mao says it, and it's lib whenever I say it. But yeah, but no, I think that's absolutely the case. We need a more intellectual approach to politics and understanding the world. And a lot of even leftists reject that because they confuse intellectualism with elitism, and that's totally not it.
Yes, yes. No, that's very true. One of the things that very much annoys me is when I see posts or people saying, um, that you have to talk to the working class like the working class, that not to give them this intellectual, philosophical theory mumbo jumbo. This is precisely class propaganda.
Yep.
I know this because, and maybe I've proven it already to your audience, but I did not go to college. And I am a working class person. So when I'm talking to someone and they say, hey, I don't want all this college postmodern bullshit. I'm like, it doesn't work because, I didn't do that. I understand this stuff, or at least I think I do it. I understand what I'm saying at least. So you can't use that against people. People are smart. It
Yeah.
doesn't, they might not know the definition of some word, but they can understand the context. That's how we grow up. Babies learn context and understand to form sentences eventually. Talk to someone how you talk to them about the stuff, and don't dumb it down. They will be interested. Most people have an innate curiosity, and they want to learn stuff. They want to master ideas. It
Hmm.
feels good in the brain, I think, to learn something new. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I think most people are not immune to is immediate intellectual stimulation, right? You just have to do it in the right ways. And that can be different for a lot of people, but nonetheless, an actual intellectual sort of endeavor is where I think a lot of again my personal political project is interested in. And a lot of the intellectual endeavor of Mao, sadly, it didn't include actually exploring the whole totality of the realm of ideas, where I think that's what you need to do. Like, for example, reading works of fascism, or reading even sort of the underpinnings of fascism is quite important to understanding it. I think, but you weren't the project of intellectualism in a Marxist context that we saw in the existing world. It wasn't actually intellectual, because I don't find that intellectual, where you can only partition certain readings. You can only the parameters in which you could explore this intellectual realm was so stringent that it sort of defeated its purpose, right? But I think more than that, I think there's an even deeper element to just the content of what you read, but it's the content of analysis and how we look at things, and that requires understanding. I think having an ingrained understanding of logic, critical thinking, and even like sort of understanding things like dialectical analyses of the world, and that would require, in my opinion, even within a bourgeoisie capitalist society, completely restructuring our educational system where children, this would piss a lot of people off, children in elementary school learn critical thinking because they can fucking do it. I know whenever you said you haven't gone to college, so this may not be an immediate experience of yours, but something that's very common is intro. I see our teen was in here, and I'm sure he knows about this, but when college students take a philosophy 101 class and it goes over logic and critical thinking, they fucking fail the class. And it's the most rudimentary basic logic, but it's hard. It's hard. I took it and it was hard. I can't believe I got a fucking B in it. And the reason for that is because we are primed. Our brains are structured from day one to think very illogically, to think uncritically, right? And I think if we can, it's like little kids learning languages. They suck that up. It's so easy for children to learn languages, and it's very difficult for adults too. And I would imagine that the process of learning critical thinking would be very similar for children, where it would actually be a lot easier for them to understand sort of the logical underpinnings and ingrain that into their psyche from a young age. And I think truly, what a powerful thing that would be, even within the terrible systems at bay with bourgeoisie capitalism.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be very empowering for them.
Yeah.
which is, you know, probably why there's um, a probably why it's not done so readily, because it would
100%.
empower children. Yeah, and you know, you teach someone critical thinking, and they're going to start questioning things. So if you have
100%.
an entrenched power structure, you don't want anyone questioning that.
Yeah, and you know, it's like I again, I think this is where ideology comes in play, where we think about everything, and you know, it's a very common thing to even on the left to think of everything intentionally, right? Where there's evil people at the top controlling everything. No, the half the time the evil people on the top, there's an ideological rationalization to what they're doing. They don't think they're doing something evil half the time. People in education don't even realize that they're doing something harmful, right? Rather, when incorporating critical thinking into like an educational curriculum, one, there's the impetus that kids are kind of stupid. That's an ideological function, I think, of a capitalist system, is where we think of children as something like blank slated, tabula rasa. They're dumb, they're stupid. That's wrong. Second thing is, I think there's probably a subconscious understanding of most people that if you taught kids critical thinking, it would piss parents off. They actually would, like, imagine that, like, truly think like that would actually, like, they wouldn't understand, because again, the people that would make angry, they don't even understand critical thinking, and that would make them mad. I think there would actually be a pushback against that from parents, and that's mind-blowing. But me and my brother have talked about that before. We're like, dude, if they started teaching critical thinking in elementary schools, no joke, parents would start getting angry about that. Like, that would, like, understanding logical fallacies and stuff like that, that would make parents mad.
They would. They would. And a good way to test this assumption is, you know, start applying critical thinking to your boss. You know, like the audience. Start applying critical thinking to your boss when they tell you to do something that you think doesn't make sense. And, you know, lay out some very basic logic to them to question something, and it will piss people off.
Yeah.
I did this with the COVID stuff. You know, we at my work at a grocery store, we adopted certain policies at the very beginning of the COVID stuff, and then when we loosened those policies, you know, I got quite irritated with my management about it and talking to them. You know, I just laid out pretty basic stuff and basically was like, all right, well, here's what we were doing last month. And they're like, yes, yes, yes. And I was like, okay, was that a bad thing to do, or did we do the right thing? Oh, we did absolutely the right thing. Okay, and the case numbers are like 3 times higher now, right? Yes, they are. Oh, okay, so why are we doing less? Well, this is the policy now. You know, you can't bring that up. Like,
Yep.
that basic kind of questioning, which is not like mind blowing or anything. It doesn't take any special thought to come up with that. It's not a product of genius. It's just basic thinking. You know, and it very much irritates people. Yeah, and parents would probably be irritated even more because they think their power over the child is even more entrenched than a boss's power over their worker.
A
Because a
hundred.
worker can quit, you know, a child can't quit.
Exactly. It's something that I think even it would almost be a libidinal response, right? And it wouldn't necessarily be something that's consciously or like consciously developed, right? It wouldn't be. It would be one of those things where, like, I just don't really like that. And they wouldn't be able to elaborate on it, right? It'd be one of those things, right? It would be like, well, that just sounds like, well, they're just kids. They don't understand that because they don't understand it themselves. But that's
Yeah.
usually how I think that's usually how newer approaches go with a lot of things. There's a libidinal reaction to it that's very subconsciously ingrained. But I think those things like that are incredibly important, and I think those are things, again, even within this capitalist framework, that we have to address. Again, and I think we have to think pluralistically, where a lot of people would say, like, fuck that, like, I don't care about thinking about what we can do within capitalism, nothing will work. Well, that's not true. We should absolutely try to completely change the structures at bay. And that requires input from the exterior and the interior as well, right? Organize on the outside, um, yeah, try to actually combat the structures, while also inside in the interior, try to restructure and reorganize as well.
Yeah, we should be trying to change and challenge everything.
Yeah.
You know, it it yeah, capitalism and the world are dynamic. So, this is something that Zizek touches on sometimes too, is like a small change in something that might not seem like the biggest thing. You don't know. It could have ripple effects. This is chaos theory. Adam Curtis touched on chaos theory in his newest "Can't Get You Out of My Head" documentary, and I was a little disappointed he didn't give it its full credit. The thing about chaos theory that I think a lot of people don't get, and I'm not a mathematician, this is just my understanding of reading the theory, but it's that there are these patterns, but one tiny change in something will completely change the trajectory, and it might be something that seems unimportant. And it can really have drastic impacts because of the interconnectedness of all of these systems operating. So, to bring the Zizek example, Zizek would say something like universal health care in America, which, yeah, is not the most radical thing. It's not socialism, it's social democracy. It's this
Right.
basic thing. But doing that in America could challenge many things, both ideologically by showing that something can be nationalized and that can function, but also in the way that it would affect the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, all sorts of stuff. It will, all these things, one small system changing can have vast effects that will lead to new possibilities being opened up and new challenges being able to be mounted.
100%. I think thinking outside that realm is just purely lazy. Like that is such lazy thought. You have to think about the intrinsic connections and the sort of the pinnings of everything connected. That's kind of, in my opinion, why I hate the discussion of electoral politics versus non-electoral politics. I hate that. It's really, really lazy, in my opinion. I really think that there's a lot of dichotomies that exist within politics that I don't like, right? There's dichotomies within theory that I don't like. For example, one of them being materialism, the battle between materialism and idealism. Like, dude, grow the fuck up. It's a false dichotomy in so many ways, right? They reinforce each other, and this is the project of critical theorists. They pointed this out. Like, look, dude, guys, like materialism is not wrong. Idealism on its own isn't wrong. Rather, we're seeing a fucking synthesis of it completely emerge with new capitalism. Zizek has talked about this immediately. Non-electoral politics and electoral politics, in many ways, I don't see a complete base antagonism. Rather, there seems to be an argument as well that you could make with the continuation of electoral politics, electing even social democrats. It expands sort of class consciousness itself, right? People are starting, like, truly what Bernie Sanders did was, I think what Bernie Sanders did is actually helped the immediate small sector of the left expand beyond what we could have thought in the United States. Truly, we don't think about this a lot. We were talking about 2012 and 2013. Dude, someone like Bernie Sanders was unimaginable. Unimaginable. Absolutely. I was actually still politically involved. I was very young and I was very interested in politics. That was unimaginable. We couldn't think that a social democrat like that would even be possible. So I don't
Yeah,
find
I
yeah.
I was a Dennis Kucinich person when he ran, and yeah, he's nowhere near as radical as Bernie, and he was looked at like he was full communism at the
Yeah.
time, even though he didn't even express those things. So it's very true. It's Yeah, Bernie went from being someone who you would share clips of on YouTube, like his speech, his like arguments with Rand Paul or something like that, and now, yeah, it really was quite a feat for how much he blew up. And then quite a sad story.
It's a sad story, and then at the same time we saw expansion of people in the House of Reps,
Oh yeah,
where we now have people like Jamal Bowman, we have AOC, and it doesn't matter if their immediate politics are insufficient. That's not the point. They are insufficient, and that is the point, right? It's not that that's a base antagonism. Rather, it's an elaboration on the fact that, look, we need to expand class consciousness, we need to expand organization, and that these people, even within capitalist structures like the U.S. government, it's not a base antagonism by default. Rather, it can expand class consciousness, and it can expand the need and the necessitation for organization. And I truly think most ideas around this are purely really ideological and extremely lazy. Um, and that's why I sort of am a proponent at large, what I would call, I mean, some people have called it this as well, but just pluralism, right? Looking at things from a pluralistic view, and I've been told like that's just centrism on steroids. Fuck off. No, it's not. It's sort of like an anti-centrism, if anything. But yeah, no, it's I truly think that if there's an argument to be made, there's an argument to be made that electoral politics, quote unquote, like hurts direct organization. Fine, but I haven't heard any immediate arguments of that. Right? We've heard historical arguments of Marxist movements being held back from sort of electoral politics, but right now we're in a totally different socioeconomic situation, right? The arguments don't quite stand. Those are historical arguments, and they're valid. And they're valid in the sense that if we get to a similar structure, we should be able to recognize this. But right now, we're not in a similar structure whatsoever. And so I find that completely abandoning electoral politics, the necessity for it, is really odd. And not only that, is it not only odd, I've met people personally who talk about how electoral politics are a sham. In many ways, it is, absolutely. But then they canvass for Bernie Sanders. What the fuck is that? That is the biggest contradiction I've ever fucking heard. Do you regret canvassing for Bernie Sanders? And I don't think they do. And you shouldn't regret it. I canvassed for Bernie quite a bit in Kansas City. And I don't regret it one bit. But yeah, we should do both.
Yeah, you should do both. I mean, I think I really don't see a contradiction in recognizing that, yeah, a lot of electoral politics is a sham, but also wanting the best you could get out of it. But when someone expresses anti-electoralism, like saying like you're actually harming something by participating in this, you know, see what organization they have. Ask them, well, where's the dual power organization that you're a member of that I can plug into, and where is it?
Right.
So if you're anti-electoralism to that extent, but you're not doing something, far better, you're just a nihilist.
100%.
So what's the difference?
I mean, isn't that the true function of nihilism, though? Ironically, nihilism isn't like a depressive state of mind. It's sort of a logic of inaction, right? And it's a libidinal excuse and a political excuse. And I see that all the time. I see that so much. And ironically, that's the most anti-Marxist thing you could do, right? What is Marxism other than a true elaboration on political organization and the necessity for it? But we can expand on this more, where we see an inverse reaction, where the inverse reaction is where people see that maybe electoral politics is insufficient, so they just don't do anything. That happens all the fucking time. I see it everywhere, and it mind boggles me. It's crazy. It's insanity. And that is truly the most nihilistic thing in the world, if you ask me. I completely agree.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, I agree too.
Well, yeah.
We've talked a lot. I'm talking here with you. It's interesting. I think because we agree on a lot of stuff. We've chatted before in messengers and through chats. I've joined in through other streams you've done. So I know we agree on a lot. So it's interesting because we're chatting here, I think, a lot more currently than either of us typically does, especially with my content with the acid left, which is, yeah, it's been fun. But I do want people to know I don't think this would necessarily represent like the acid left's content or my own personal content. I have a YouTube. I upload stuff very randomly to it. I'm more of a static visual image artist, but occasionally I upload stuff there.
Okay. So you said this isn't representative of the acid left?
Well, I mean, representative in a lot of ways, in attitudes and beliefs, sure. I'm just saying, like, if people are watching this and they want to go to the ass left to expect something quite like
Oh
this, it'd
yeah,
be a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
different. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We're talking, I think, here a little bit more concretely, which I've really enjoyed, and a little more forthright. Whereas, like in the acid left, we tend to really put an aesthetic focus on stuff to highlight and kind of approach it from more abstract angles a lot
Right.
of the times.
It's much deeper than in many ways, and I respect that. That's something that some people get a little bit confused when they come to my channel on stream. My YouTube channel, the videos that I make are actually in the same vein of I'm trying to translate books into a video form, but on stream I talk a lot about the application of that theory into politics because I'm a politically my major, one of my majors is political science, and so I care I care about politics at large, and I use theory in a political orientation, which naturally theory always is political, but I take a little bit more of an extra political step, and so that's certainly I would imagine the acid left doesn't quite do, but it does. I'll be honest, people have been mad before. I've seen they're like, why are you just talking about politics all the time? Like that's my interest, like outside of and inside of theory.
Yeah, that's quite strange. I think that someone would say that to you, considering the theory that you cover.
Yeah, people are strange,
If
man.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. But and strangeness is good.
Hmm.
So good for people. Good for.
Yeah. So man,
Um,
I think that's about all the time I have, and partially I would talk longer. I got to it, so I'm working again. I'm working on the German ideology, and I need to get working on this. But dude, I really enjoyed talking to you. It was actually a lot of fun. These last couple conversations I've been having, I had one with the philosophy chat not too long ago. These past couple conversations have been among my favorites. So I really appreciate you coming on. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really enjoyed it as well. If you have just like 2 minutes,
Oh yeah,
could
yeah.
I read a poem for your audience?
Hell yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. I always like whenever, I do interviews and stuff, but I always like to give a little bit of something on the more creative side.
100%.
Because ultimately, I'm not a, I'm very interested in philosophy and I'm very interested in politics, but I'm an artist above anything else. So I'll read
Absolutely.
this one. This is one actually loosely inspired by Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, and it's called The End of the End of the World.
All right.
Nature is good and basically evil. Limit the damage. I see people in pain. I see the grimace, the strain on their faces, and the stress. In that situation, needing a dream in order to avoid the nightmare. They were painted in a riot, adorned with flowers. Economy is a dream. A lot of people do cool stuff, but here's the thing. If you look away from the bright lights and the dull numbers, thousands more die on the hooks of long line fishing vessels. I have a dream that I can make symbiosis work. Before we could conduct our search, we had to test the secret weapon. This flexibility serves us well in situations that demand carrying a scorching microwave. That mind the mind knows that greater misery by holding the momentary suffering. To invest, manure is digested. Society, including men with significant financial resources, is one challenge. Once in power is another. We were able to put the channel into pain signaling neurons and cause them to go burp when they should be going bop bop. Debt drives about 1,000 farmers a Debt drives 1,000 farmers to suicide every year. A poignant combination of vulnerability and toughness. An albatross can't stop us from eating its young. All the trash we make is not evil. It's a sign we're a little bit dumb. There was a time when humans were so grateful for rivers, they made them into divinities. We see what is not there, time, location, morph, and disappear. Or do we? Perhaps, able it proves, sensory secret. Experiment without personal mission. We're awake, the brain, all those limbs, driving and shopping and texting, the money earning. We're sleeping. Or to quote Marilyn Monroe, it's good to have caviar, but not when you have it at every meal. Beans maybe, but not caviar. How to trick mycelium? Perform a ritual. We can improve nature. A biodegradable ice cream wrapper, wildflower seeds. You could litter, it would propagate beauty. So that's that. A little bit of a
Awesome.
surreal poem to end on.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. That feels very inspired by capitalist realism, yet at the same time a little bit more hopeful.
Yes, I like to have a little bit of hope. Absolutely.
That's something
There's
definite.
hope in despair.
Yeah, that's something definitely Mark Fisher could have used more of for sure.
True, true. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I love the chat, and yeah, if anyone wants to check out my stuff personally, poetry, art, and stuff, it's Dirt Son of Earth. And then of course I'm with Mike Watson at The Acid Left. We would love you to check it out.
Absolutely, guys, check them out. They make truly some of the most unique content you could probably find, and that's really really cool. It feels the most uncommodified platform of like creative I've ever seen. Like truly, you guys are like anti-commodification. I'm a fucking dirty capitalist compared to you guys. Like it's super unique and really really creative. It's really really cool.
I appreciate it.
Yep. So
I love your videos. I think your video essays are top notch. Truly truly pleasing.
oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm definitely I think my project is to truly make. I want to make the most encompass. I find a lot of I really enjoy Philosophy Tube, ContraPoints, a lot of philosophy channels. They just don't feel like they're an actual application of theory and philosophy at large. It feels pretty intro, and that's not bad. Rather I just try to be a little bit more concrete. I try to make videos that I wish I could have seen, and someone who's a lot like that is Plastic Pills. That's why Plastic Pills arguably my favorite channel.
Yeah, Plastic Pills is fantastic.
100%. So yeah, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I'm gonna go ahead and probably head on out of here real quick, but thank you so much, guys. Again, check out The Acid Left. Definitely really really cool stuff. So yeah, thanks for coming on, dude. Oh, are you there? Oh, okay. All right, guys. So thanks for hanging out. Fuck School of Life, though. Yeah, dude, School of Life sucks. Really, really bad. They're intros of intros, right? I think that's the best way to describe them, for sure. But yeah, again, thanks for hanging out, guys. That was actually one of my. I really like Adam's really cool. I would like to get Mike from The Acid Left as well on. That would be really, really, really cool. We'll definitely do that. Adam, we'll definitely have to do this again, my friend. But guys, as always, couldn't do any of this without you guys on Patreon, YouTube members, stuff like that. Again, YouTube doesn't pay shit. Every little bit helps, and truly, patrons and YouTube members help keep all of this alive. I couldn't do it without any of you guys. Mateo, again, thank you so much for the $5. I really appreciate you guys. Also, along with that as well, if you guys want to bookmark our Amazon link and just use it whenever you buy stuff on Amazon, helps a ton. Really do appreciate it. So thanks. Sorry, can't talk. Thanks so much for hanging out, guys. I will see you later.